This is probably the thing that my family argues about the most, and it might be the same for you. I got asked this question on my YouTube channel recently about screen time and how I manage it, and so today we are going to answer the things. I'm going to discuss my personal philosophy on screen time, sort of my history with it with kids, and what we do now as a family of 5 with 3 kids under the age of 9. So if that is interesting to you, make sure you subscribe, give this video a big like, and let's get into it. One of the things that sticks out to me when I reflect back on screen time and what has shaped my opinion on it, besides just instinct, is I had a pediatrician when my first baby was born, and he told me never to have the TV on when my child was in the room until he was around 2 years old. And I thought it was kind of interesting because as I got into motherhood and he was around as a baby, he did not care about a screen or TV or a phone or anything like that. And what this doctor was trying to convey was that me as the adult, I am the one that gets distracted by a television, and it can rob my child and me of the interaction that we could have because the screen is zapping all my attention. And that's kind of always stuck with me because I've always kind of thought about the opportunity cost of allowing children sort of unlimited screen time, or if they're watching TV, what are they not doing instead of that? And are screens or television shows, are they really benefiting them? And yes, there's definitely pros and cons on both sides and debate on both sides, because there are some very educational things that we consume via video and screens and media. And there's also just kind of junk food for your brain. So my philosophy is that you can always wait to start your kids on screens. I don't think they will be at any disadvantage if they are not coding at the age of 4 years old. In fact, there's been studies done that, only introduce computers and coding to teenagers, and they do great. I never really felt like I needed to introduce my children to technology. Technology will find us. It is everywhere in the world that we live in, and so there is no need to rush that relationship. I also found, and this is kind of where we are right now, that the more screens we consumed, even though I tried to be so diligent and mindful about it, the more they wanted. It was like crack to them. Especially like one of my kids would really struggle to switch off a show because the way it's designed, they just keep on going. So if I didn't set a timer for the length of that show, because I always used televisions or screens very intentionally, kind of like a babysitter. I am not ashamed to admit that, because I would only put them on out of desperation. But if I didn't set a timer on my phone that this episode was going to finish, it would just go on forever, and my children would not have the ability to switch off, especially at that age. And we would have these mega tantrums, and it just wasn't worth the 30 minutes or 20 minutes of peace that I would get having them being zombies in front of the TV. We've kind of done away with it altogether. So here's the thing. If you're in a position now where you use screens as babysitter, as an aid for you, it's a personal choice. Like if you feel as a mom, you've been with your kids alone all day and you need that bit of peace, and if you don't get that for yourself, you're gonna start being short with them and snippy. Obviously, choose what is best for your family. But I have found if you can get through that period of adjusting to not having screens, because it is very addictive and it is kind of a habit for both the parents to use as a crutch and the children, if you can get through that period of changing a habit, you will find that there will be a lot more peace in your home. There's less to argue about. Your children don't ask you for screens, devices, television, because it's just not an option, right? They just don't expect it, so why even bother asking? And I really think by taking screens out of the picture, you encourage them to play by themselves a little bit more, maybe to read a book, to play with each other if they have siblings. It just cultivates a much more calmer atmosphere. Now, there are things that we use screens for. For example, we have family that live very far away from us, and we use FaceTime as a way to connect and stay in touch with them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think technology has enhanced our relationship. We would not have the same relationship today had this happened to us 20 years ago. And especially during the pandemic when we couldn't travel and see each other, it was really, really special. Another thing we use technology for is the Duolingo app. My son is learning Mandarin at school, and his teacher asked that they do Duolingo every day to keep up with Mandarin. And as none of us speak Mandarin in the house, this is a good option for him to hear the language. We were finding that initially we allowed him to use an iPad that we use only for traveling on an airplane. And it started to like filter everywhere. He wanted to text his friends, he wanted to go on the internet, he wanted to go on YouTube. He started to sneak this iPad even though I'd put restrictions on it. It was terrible, and that really made me feel like, yeah, we are not ready as a family. I haven't decided how we're going to navigate this as he becomes a preteen and older, because I understand, like, we're living in this world. I can't isolate him from his friends by not having any texting capabilities. I can limit social media, but that's a video for another day. It became a problem. So now what we do is he does Duolingo on my computer in the mornings before school. He was always an early riser, but he was waking up extra early just to go on his iPad. I thought I was restricting kind of everything, but clearly not. And it was very disconcerting because I just don't know what's happening online. And I tried to explain to him that the internet is not a place for little children, and things can pop up and you can see things that you're just not ready for. I also know, just by knowing my children and having tried different things, like we tried family movies, you know, we've tried them throughout the years. They haven't gone well because my kids are not ready for them yet. And did you know that movies, kids movies, have age restrictions, and those should be respected? So for example, we tried to allow my son, who was probably like 6 or 7, to watch Frozen. We let them watch Frozen. He watched Frozen and was old enough to understand that right in the beginning, the parents go missing at sea, and Elsa and Anna no longer have parents. And for a child, that can be very traumatizing. So just be very aware of what you're allowing your children to consume. Maybe read a little blurb about it, read what other parents have said about it, look at the age restriction. So now if we had to go and watch Frozen at the age of 8, nearly 9, I don't know how he would behave, but he has never asked to watch it again. He found it very traumatic. We literally started to watch Shrek last night. We watched half of it, and you know, they were like a little hesitant around Shrek in the beginning, and the dragon, and there's lava, and you know, because they understand that these things can be dangerous, and for children there's such a blurred line between reality and fantasy and what is pretend. So I just ask you to guard those little minds and souls, because you can't unsee things that you've already seen. As a side note, I briefly mentioned social media earlier. I'm reading a book called The Anxiety Generation, which I believe is quite new. It's just come out. Highly recommend that for all parents, because it is absolutely frightening how things have shifted so dramatically since the introduction of the smartphone in around 2010, and how you can just see teenage mental illness skyrocketing since social media became more mainstream, and parents not really knowing how to manage. They're not wanting to limit their kids from social interaction. That is a very scary book. I think more people need to read it so that we collectively can petition to protect our children. Another way we use screens as a tool is on airplanes. This is kind of the only time that we let our kids kind of watch things in an unlimited fashion. It depends how long the flight is, but we will make them have breaks and just rest their eyes. But honestly, they would just sit there on the plane and watch until I don't even know if they would go to the bathroom or eat. I feel like they get so locked into it, and it makes me nervous that screens have such a hypnotic effect on them. And it's because their brains are young and developing, and they're just so immersed in these worlds, and there just needs to be a balance. But on an airplane, it's a little bit of a different story. It's not like they can easily get up and walk around, and there's not a ton of things that we can do. So that is a time where I'm kind of a lot more relaxed about screens, but that is the exception rather than the rule. The other thing that we do instead of screens is a lot of audiobooks. We have a Yoto, which I really love for kids. It is basically like a personal audiobook speaker, and you get little cards that you put in. My daughter especially really enjoys them, loves them. I really think that's a great alternative, because that's the thing. If you're trying to break a habit, you need to replace it with something that is better for you. And so an audiobook or audiobook machine might be a much better option for your kids. Another time that we let them watch screens is sporting events. I mean, the only reason we have a TV primarily is so my husband can watch tennis, big tennis fan. So my son, who's also really into tennis, will watch with him. And you know, sometimes we'll all watch a big match together, or if the Olympics were on or the Rugby World Cup was on, the kids and I watch rugby because we were supporting South Africa. It's like a big deal. But these are like isolated events, you know, that you can't really watch other than on a TV. And it's different. It's almost like watching a family movie. So to me, that's in a different category from just letting them watch Netflix unmonitored for hours and hours. So this is kind of how I handle screen time. We, as a rule, just do not use screens in our kids' lives in everyday activities. they don't ask for them because they know that I'm probably going to just say no, or we're going to do something else, I always think about the opportunity costs. Like, if my children go to school all day, then they come home and do a sport or an activity, and then we need to have dinner and have a bath and read books and like play and hang out. If they are dedicating an hour or two of their very precious time after school before bed to an iPad, like, it's just, there's plenty of time for that when they're grown-ups and they can decide how they want to spend their time. And hopefully whatever I've tried to instill in them gets through to them, you know, and they live their life in that way to a degree. But there's just plenty of time for that, whereas childhood is fleeting, and I want them to be playing with each other. I want them to be playing independently. I want them to be helping out around the house. I want to interact with them and hang out. And I just feel like letting them watch too much TV, it comes at such a cost. And we were just really struggling to have balanced television or moderated television. Like, it kind of has to be all or nothing at this point. Maybe that'll change as they get older, but I just didn't have the energy to be monitoring and like barking orders and dealing with tantrums and having to be the bad guy all the time. And so it's better if we just remove screens primarily from our life. And just one last thing, it's not that we don't have technology. My husband has an iPad, we each have laptops, we each have phones, we have a big TV. It's not that we're anti-technology in any way, really, but we just feel like for our children, it's not really enhancing their lives. So yeah, let me know what you guys do about technology, or what is your thought about it. I really think that it is a personal decision, but you also don't need to be incorporating screens into your children's lives if it's working out for you. So work on cultivating skills of playing independently and them just not being used to relying on a screen. They're always going to gravitate towards a screen versus reading a book or playing, because those are harder things to do, and a screen is just like easy zone out time. And like when a child is sick or something, that's different. But just in everyday life, I don't think you need as much screen time as maybe you have been sold. And I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in my next video. Bye. I'm trying to make this darkness go away.